Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for today's session on Forcepoint ONE Web Security. I'm Corey Kiesewetter, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and today I'm joined by Justin Crowley, our Sales Engineering Enablement Manager. And we're going to be speaking a little bit about Zero Trust Web Access, how Forcepoint ONE Web Security is really the gold standard or standard bearer when it comes to the best capabilities of a web security solution, not just access control, but also keeping sensitive data in and keeping threats out, and the increased importance of this kind of zero trust control for what is otherwise an uncontrollable resource, the internet, and specifically a use case that is very pertinent to everybody right now, GenAI. I want to take a step back real quick to just talk about the role of the internet, of web access in general. It is the most critical resource for most workers nowadays to get their job done, and it's important more so than ever before because really the internet is where new innovations, new technology innovations first become available for us to consume as organizations, as businesses, as individual workers, users at a company. And where zero trust is typically talked about in terms of controlling access to resources that the organization owns, a lot of times, applications, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, you have control over that resource and who can get to it. However, implementing those same types of controls over the web can be a little bit harder unless you have a true best of breed web security technology like Forcepoint ONE Web Security. And again, GenAI, as it came out, the easiest use cases to kind of take advantage of were like ChatGPT online, and then later on maybe using enterprise versions, SaaS versions. So you need the best of breed web security to control how your users are probably going to be using GenAI at first, but also for the long term, for the future. You need to be able to enforce those same sorts of zero trust controls consistently across the use of those same GenAI applications if they're sanctioned enterprise applications like SaaS apps or even internal private applications. And so that's why I think it is critical for organizations to leverage the best of breed solution when it comes to web security technologies. Because just as this diagram is showing, you need the best of breed in order to actually implement zero trust controls, both advanced threat protections, which we will show you here in a little bit, not just built-in, malware scanning and blocking, which yes, you need the best of breed there as well, but also technologies for maybe using sites that might be suspicious or risky, things like remote browser isolation to allow you to truly interact with content and get the best value out of any kind of website that you may need access to, even if it is potentially risky or compromised. And that's just half of the zero trust equation. The other half is true enterprise class data security, which again, we will also demonstrate on this call and show you specifically within the context of generative AI using ChatGPT, how we can implement controls, not just at the file level, but also at the field level when you're typing in text or copying and pasting text into a prompt to use, how you can easily, as an organization, wrap guardrails around the use of generative AI sites, all the while implementing the best possible user experience, even if you're going through additional controls such as remote browser isolation. And this is going to be necessary, not just for onboarding things like GenAI, but the full use of the web, of social media, of unrecognized sites, and even potentially contaminated sites that you may still need access to. Which is, again, all the more reason why organizations have an increased need today for the best of breed solutions when it comes to securing use of the web and particularly GenAI sites, which is why I'm proud to promote the strengths of Forcepoint ONE Web Security, whether it's the real-time advanced threat protection powered by our very powerful advanced categorization engine, otherwise known as ACE, the industry-leading data security controls that I've already mentioned, the easy connectivity, no matter where. This is actually, I think, one of the most promising aspects of the solution is just how flexible it is. No matter where your users are and what web resources they're needing to use, if they're at home, in the office, on the road, we have a vast array of ways to get the traffic to where it needs to be, whether we're inspecting that locally on the device, out in the cloud, or even locally on the network at your managed sites, to be right there at the edge. And of course, this is going to allow you to use bandwidth more effectively and efficiently, even in low bandwidth environments. Again, speaking a little bit to the distributed enforcement, the ability to enforce controls locally on device, and always giving you the best browsing experience, whether you're enforcing controls locally on the device, at the network edge, or in the cloud. And now with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Justin to show us exactly how this works, to show you what the end user experience looks like as we implement guardrails around controlling sensitive data with use in generative AI sites, or using remote browser isolation to secure users as they access any site, even contaminated or risky sites. Justin?
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Yeah, so as you mentioned with generative AI, it offers immense potential, right? When it comes to enhancing productivity, customer engagement, and decision-making process. However, we know, as you mentioned, the usage also brings, security challenges if it's data leakage, sensitive information exposure, or compliance risks. So you mentioned earlier we're talking about Forcepoint ONE Web Security. So what can Forcepoint ONE Web Security do for my users, or do for me as an admin? Corey mentioned real-time protection and controls. So when we access these AI applications, we can ensure that the user is interacting with these tools securely and within your policy guidelines. So on my workstation, we'll simply bring up ChatGPT. And one great thing that we have is coaching, right? So you as an admin can control who has access to these generative AI tools. Maybe there's certain departments that there's no need for them to access it. Whereas the marketing team, maybe they want to do some market research. Maybe the enablement team wants to find some new trends or some new interactive ways to have enablement sessions. But you have full control over who has access to what. And in this case, I'm on the marketing team. I want to be able to do some market research. So I'm able to prompt and say, hey, Justin, are you sure you want to use this? Please use it for business purposes. You have full control over what this page looks like. You could have your company acceptable use policy just to, again, to drive home to the user, please use this website securely. Make sure you're not uploading any sensitive data. So I'll click on
And
continue to the
I want
website.
to
Yeah, great.
take a moment just to remind everybody of the importance in terms of best practices for organization, the use of both block pages and confirmation pages to help instill the necessary knowledge for cybersecurity hygiene. It's no secret that organizations, especially the larger the organization, you've got people of various levels of, security maturity, let's say, and having the ability to completely customize these confirmation and block pages allows you to constantly reiterate training, best practices. So, for example, you're in this organization going to this GenAI site. This is completely allowed, but we want to remind you that you are only supposed to use these sorts of data within this particular site, or whatever the acceptable use policy might be. You can have these as an opportunity to always reinforce company policy and make sure that users are knowledgeable and not just relying on that once a month or once a year cybersecurity training that users might have to go through.
Yeah, exactly. User education and awareness, right? Being able to promote that user awareness by providing those real-time alerts and guidance on secure data usage, practices, and to make sure, compliance assurance, to just be able to maintain your compliance, data protection regulations by preventing, unauthorized data sharing. So now that we're in the application, right, we know there's multiple ways that I can interact with the app. So in this case, let's do a simple, hello world, right? And we're going to get a response back from our prompt here. So now I'm an end user. We know there's plenty of ways for me to use the application. So in this case, let's say I have a employee information document, right? So if we just quickly open this, it's a file that has some social security, has some employee numbers. There's maybe some credit card number information in this. It's not very formatted pretty well. So maybe I want ChatGPT to format this or sort this information. So I'm going to try to upload this file into ChatGPT. And just like any data leakage, this may not be malicious, right? As a user, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to make it easier. So maybe not be doing this in a malicious intent, but I'm going to try uploading this. And you'll notice the upload fails instantly, right? Our DLP is able to scan that data in motion to say, hey, wait a second, there's some sensitive data in here. There's social security, there's credit card. This looks like PII. I'm not going to let you upload this into this application. Now, what happens if I try to, I just did a refresh on the page and that's why I got my confirmation again. Let's try to type in the text. So maybe I don't want to upload a file. I'm going to actually try typing it in. So I'm going to say, please sort this information. And maybe I'll copy some of this text in here. And let's go ahead and paste. And let's try to upload this information. You can see it's trying to process, but we're actually blocking this in line. And I can even show you through our developer tools in the browser in a second. But you notice it didn't even go through, right? We're not even able to generate that response. So actually, if we jump in and create a new chat here, again, I'm just going to refresh the page here. So what
And
we
while
can
we're
do,
bringing this up, I just want to mention I was at a conference for marketing professionals not too long ago, and there were a lot of marketing companies talking about, generative AI solutions that they had. And the number one question I heard from every single person there asking, these vendors is, hey, I'm cautious about using this. I don't want sensitive information to accidentally get exposed to any of these data models, especially if it's not a private application that we're kind of using in an air-gapped environment. This is the number one concern. How do I wrap data security guardrails around the use of AI, generative AI, so that my employees can be as productive as possible while still mitigating the risks that can be there? Because let's face it, everybody is acknowledging that Gen AI sites are a bit of a black box. Once stuff goes in, we don't really have much visibility, let alone control over what happens after data gets into it. So that's why we need these kind of guardrails in order to truly take advantage of the productivity gains that Gen AI can promise.
exactly, yeah. And so what I did here is I just brought up developer tools just so you can see in the back end kind of what's actually happening and to show that we're truly blocking this. So if I go to try to upload my conversation, you can see the conversation loading here as pending. So the request actually hasn't even gone through yet. And you can even see some of the 403 starting, and then there's my 403. So there's the something went wrong, as you can see on the top end of the screen here, but we can see my request didn't actually go through. So even though I was able to paste that in, the request, because again, our data security and web security solution is in line, right? I'm able to control that data in motion and it doesn't even make it to ChatGPT. And that's why ChatGPT gives us that error response, because it's essentially saying, hey, there's nothing in this request. There's nothing for me to process. This is an invalid request, and it errors out. It's because you can see we're actually blocking. There's the 403 forbidden being sent back to the browser.
And again, this is another reason why web security is so critical for using Gen AI, is because you need that real-time inline controls. And there are opportunities to augment with API-based controls, but API-based controls are always after the fact. And so if you're only relying on something that may be API-based, you're still probably going to have data going into that data model, and then the API trying to adjudicate things after it's gone in there. A lot of times it's too late at that point. You need to have as a primary layer of defense inline control first, and then augment that with API after. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the other half of the zero trust equation, which is blocking malware and ransomware, that zero trust control, not just the sensitive data protection that we've already shown, but actually going through and using, in this case, remote browser isolation to isolate traffic in a remote, secure environment. Um, and Justin can speak to a little bit more of what's going on behind the scenes, but basically, you're running in a secure remote container, and as soon as that session is over, the VM running that session is deleted. So it doesn't matter if you're interacting with a contaminated site. None of that is actually being passed down to the end user's device.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Yeah, so with Forcepoint One Web Security, right, RBI is a big component part of the zero trust web access, and it allowed the RBI and the Forcepoint One Web Security allows us to protect against these web-based threats, right? We're able to enforce acceptable use policies and ensure compliance, and by doing so, we can provide that real-time monitoring control over your web traffic. And the big use case around web security, in my 10 plus years around with web security is it's that gray area. We know what to allow, right? So there's certain websites that we know are legitimate, trusted websites we want to allow. On the other hand, we know there's a bunch of websites we want to block. We know what categories we want to block. But what about that in between? The uncategorized. We know a lot of websites out there nowadays are brand new. They've been live for less than 24 hours. So we may not know much about them. So they could be uncategorized. Typically what happens with uncategorized, you block it. Well, now we have overblocking. What if that website doesn't need to be blocked? We just don't know enough about it. So what happens? You get a help desk ticket. The help desk engineer says, okay, we have to get to this website. What do we do? Typically, you end up opening up a hole in your proxy or your firewall or your web security solution. You put it into a bypass list. But say that site does become malicious, or we do know more about that website later on, but it's already allowed through your firewall or through your web security solution. So this is where RBI comes into play, the uncategorized, the unknown, that gray area. So in this case, let's go to tsn.ca, which is a sports website. We can see right now my policy is saying if you're going to sports, we're going to go ahead and isolate that traffic. So just like we mentioned earlier with the acceptable use policy, I can have a notification page to my end user to say, hey, just an FYI, we're about to do browser isolation on your traffic. Or we do have the ability to do an auto redirect, meaning that the user won't see this page and it'll be redirected to the website and go through the isolation. But for educational purposes, I wanted to show the notification page so we can actually see that remote browser isolation is in place. But this page is fully customizable. So you as an admin, whatever you want to list out to the end user, you can do so on this page. But in this case, I read it, great, I want to be able to access the website. So I'm going to click view in my remote browser. Now, first thing you'll notice, the URL at the top there, so we can tell that this is going through isolation. If you are an end user and you are comparing a site going through RBI versus a site going directly to the website, the end user is not going to notice a difference. You can see I still have the web page loaded. It's loaded in its full entirety. I can scroll through. I can click on different links within the website as well as if I traditionally would. And even the links I click on are still going through the isolation. So anything that I do on this website, if there's active content, dynamic content in the back end, if there's JavaScript, whatever it may be, malicious code, that's all being isolated. That is not making it down to the end user. It's never reaching the end user. And so RBI ensures that any malicious code or exploits that are contained within that remote session never make it to the end user. It never makes it to your on-premise environment. And you can see all of my interactions are still being isolated. I right click on the page, right? We can control what happens on the right click. I don't have the traditional menu when I right click on a page. I just see reload or print, and you have full control over what the user does on this website.
I'll speak a little bit to the main kind of use cases that we hear about when customers are requesting this technology. A lot of times, C-level executives, you'll have the IT team telling them, hey, we need to control things, restrict access, and they say, well, not for the CEO, not for the C-levels. If they want to be able to go there, they're going to be able to go there. And they say, okay, if that's the case, then we need something like RBI. So that is a great use case for this, but it's not limited to that. We also, depending on the industry you're in, you may have a need to more often visit sites that may have just been registered. For example, we have a lot of customers in the finance and also insurance sectors that they need to either do investigation, for example, for approving a loan for a new business. Hey, they may have a website that was just spun up. The reputation score is not very strong because it's a new business and the new business website. Well, they can go in and view that safely. regardless of whether that's an authentic new business or somebody trying to hack or defraud that provider in some way. So this is a great way to allow people, even investigators and the criminal agencies that are trying to do investigation into maybe hacking groups and stuff like that, that know or have a strong belief that, hey, this could be contaminated in some way, but in order to do my job, I still need to access and interact with that to do my research on this organization. This gives you the full ability to interact with those as you need without exposing yourself and your device to any malware that may be hosted on that site.
Well, you meant the use case around C-level executives, I think, is a great one, and that's one of the top use cases I really have seen around RBI. And C-level executives are prime targets for cyber attacks nowadays, right? They have access to sensitive information. The data and communications handled by these executives, they're high value, right? And they're making them attractive targets for phishing, malware, and other cyber threats. So being able to leverage RBI to isolate that web content to ensure that any, as I mentioned earlier, any malicious code or exploits are within that remote session, that's how we can help secure those, or secure the executives, protect them from phishing attacks, secure their web sessions, even add DLP, right? We can start adding in our data security through the RBI session as well. So I think that C-level executive is a great use case for RBI.
Alrighty, thank you, Justin. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the key main value points that we've iterated during this call. Four main areas that I think that we provide exceptional value to organizations. Number one, increasing productivity by safeguarding the use of any website, even unrecognized sites or GenAI. Also cutting costs, being able to eliminate redundant and fragmented solutions that have ineffective controls. One of the, amazing value points of the latest packaging for our Forcepoint ONE Web Security offering, it includes RBI for uncategorized sites. That's included in the base package, as well as inline control for sanctioned applications. Think, inline CASB. All of that included in the base offering will allow you to do with one tool, with one offer, what you may have been doing with 3, 4, or multiple other tools. When it comes down to reducing risk, we've shown how we can prevent ransomware and contamination from malware, not just using the best of breed security scanning engines as part of ACE, but also augmenting that with the remote browser isolation that we've just shown. And lastly, streamlining compliance so that you can show auditors how you're effectively enforcing controls on information access and usage policies. And with that, I want to say thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.